All right.
Okay, good morning still. It is Tuesday, April 2nd in Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. We're a little truncated today. We had some technical issues, but we're gonna spend 15 minutes doing our best to understand where H687 is and what generally going on with it. Before we do that, I just do want to celebrate Senator Harrison and the passage of Proposition 3 with a 29-0 vote. Great job.
You great job. All
Good
of us,
teamwork.
great job. It was great
Yeah.
teamwork. Really appreciate Senator Brock.
Yes, exactly. I know. I wanted to appreciate him too. That really set a strong tone that Vermont supports
Right.
labor and its role developing the middle class. So we'll celebrate Senator Brock as well. Maybe let me circle back to committee business.
But you did
today.
You just did
Yeah.
a terrific job.
I know. I love when I
Thank
went over
you.
the weekend. I love your. It was thorough, and it did justice to changing the Constitution.
Yes.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you. It was hard not to talk about pensions and there are just so many reasons to support labor unions.
Yeah.
But I was told, don't get into the weeds.
Yeah.
Which is hard for me.
Well, and you managed to keep it very dignified, but also personal, which was
Yeah.
also it's always good if one can find things now. So that was great.
Thanks for letting me.
Oh my God.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Ellen, for your patience here and elsewhere. Big mushing of language coming our way with 687, 308, and 311. It is, I think I'm at liberty to share that now that 687 is marching toward Senate Natural Resources, they have another 2 weeks with all three of those bills. This week will be their continued work kind of internally, and we will all start to hear more about areas that they want to explore with us next week. And beyond that, it'll spend a week in the money committees with the goal of giving it a healthy amount of time for conference as needed. Right now, I also will just say, I don't know what's going on with 829. That is not your problem, right? Is it partially your bill or no? Okay.
Can we use words for these bills?
Oh, sorry, so
687 for our public is the Act 250 bill.
It's the House Environment and Energy Act 250 related
Land use.
land use bill. H 829 came separately out of House General and has more focus on kind of the provisions we would have had in the last third of our bill on appropriations and programmatic changes and flood notification and things like that. But I don't know that there's anything in there that we need to consider. So 687 is the one that is really the vehicle right now that everything will be considered
And that is
alongside.
actually gonna live in Senate Natural Resources and Energy, not in our committee.
That's right. But we will have a lot of,
Yeah, obviously, we have a.
okay, thank you, Ellen.
Sure, Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel, and so just procedurally where we are, the House did officially pass the bill, H 687. Enacting to community resilience and biodiversity protection through land use. So however, it does not exist yet, the House passed version, because there were so many floor amendments to it. It is still being processed. It will be posted later today. So it doesn't exist yet. So if you're looking for it, it's not available, but it will be probably after lunch. And so I will also create section by section and timelines for it, potentially by the end of the day.
You're a miracle.
Thank you.
So,
Yay.
well, it's because those documents already existed in
Right,
preparation
right.
for the floor. However, the bill did change pretty significantly on the
Yeah.
floor, so I need to update all of those documents.
Right.
Specifically the timeline, a number of dates were changed in the timeline. So big picture though, I can tell you, if you want to look at something, it was draft 10.1 that was passed out of the House committee. There is a Ways and Means amendment and a Appropriations Committee amendment to them, to it. and then there's a number of other floor amendments to it. So the bill really has four big topic areas. The first 18 sections relate to updating the Act 250 governance structure, which is the Natural Resources Board being changed into the Environmental Review Board. It professionalizes this board by making the currently the board has one full-time chair and four volunteer-ish members who only meet when the board meets once a month. This now makes the other members part-time paid members of the board. It also gives board new duties, which include hearing Act 250 permit appeals from district commissions. It also gives them the authority to review and approve regional plans and regional plan maps. And so this bill, take a step back, big picture. This bill really did seek to combine the three big reports that came out of Act 47, the Act 250 Necessary Updates Report, the Regional Planning Commission, Regional Plan Map Report, and then the Designated Area Report. So those are the other two big sections. And the board being professionalized will then oversee those other two things by reviewing and approving the regional plans and their associated maps. Those maps will then be used for the designation program and the updates to that program. It will then also be used for the Act 250 new tiers program, the location-based jurisdiction that your committee did look at. And the maps will be used, the regional plans themselves and those maps will be used as somewhat as part of that process as well. So first though, in the first 18 sections, the board is being updated to a professional board and they will also hear Act 250 permit appeals. So then the next section.
So-
Maybe, should we wait for questions?
Okay,
Like,
I'm happy.
is this sort of a marriage of concepts of sorts?
Sure, yeah,
We have 5 minutes, so let's get.
Yeah, so then next though, then there's the Act 250 tiers, the location-based jurisdiction, which your committee did look at. And so, tiers 1A, 1B, 2, and 3, they actually are pretty similar to what your committee ended up doing. And so, tier 1B is an automatic designation that is part of the regional plan map review. So the regional planning commissions will work with the towns, look at the criteria, and then map those areas on the maps. And so if the NRB approves it, that designation is automatic. And that leads to a exemption for up to 50 units of housing or mixed-use development in those areas. Tier 1A is a separate application process the municipality can apply for. There are a list of criteria that the municipality needs to meet, and they coincide with the requiring land use bylaws in the town that address all of the Act 250 criteria. That is then those areas, the municipality applies to the ERB for approval, but they have met the requirements of those areas. If the ERB grants that designation, there's a full Act 250 exemption in those areas. Tier 2, the only change there is the addition of the road rule, which your bill did include, but they went with 800 feet and 2,000 feet. You went with 1,000 feet and 2,000 feet. And then for tier 3, they directed the board to do a rulemaking process to define the areas of critical resource areas in the state and statewide significance, which may include river corridors, upland, headwater streams, and habitat connectors that are of statewide significance. And there is a public process for first defining what those resources are and then how the mapping of those will occur. But it will be mapping that the NRB will do in coordination with ANR.
Does that get us to designated areas?
Sure, yeah, we can go, yeah.
Cause that's the one that I don't think we heard. Like,
Well,
it was
because
very
it-
nebulous
The one we
here.
finished.
love to touch on that. And then I think there was some amendments. I don't know, that one has a lot going on, really.
Yeah.
So he does.
Yeah, so there was a designated area report. The headline of the report is we currently have 5 designated areas. The report recommends that they be less easier to get with more incentives. And so it's combining the 5 into 2. They will be downtown and village centers and neighborhoods. These designations will be granted automatically through the regional planning process approval. And so towns don't actually have to actively do anything. But there are some additional benefits a town can receive if they take additional steps after the mapping has occurred. And so there are a list of criteria. But the centers and neighborhoods will be an automatic designation, and then those towns will have the access to the incentives associated with those programs.
Sorry, they don't even have to apply?
No.
So,
And that was in the report, which I
Yeah.
thought that was a great idea, but I think it only applied to one of the designations, but it could be hard for the tiny towns. And the idea was to have tiny towns be able to have good, solid downtowns.
So I think at this point, I wanna understand from the committee, I think, anyone who is gonna be paying close attention to the conference committee and wanting to follow this issue will probably need to go into the details of this language in committee. But we have to honor Ellen's time in terms of like this is currently living in Senate Natural Resources, but if we can work out scheduling wise, I think we need to try to get into some detail with the section by section and then looking at the language against it once it's ready. Yes.
I think so too, and
Yeah.
I always like the detail.
In the details.
The details are really important.
And the details
So,
matter.
if I can just ask two.
And now we can go to
easy
questions. Yeah.
Which are, did they talk about the time frame of the maps? Cause we spent a lot of time talking about the time frame of when everything would be ready to go, basically. And that obviously has an impact on what we have in the interim period. So I think this committee especially should be very aware of
Yes.
what is proposed in the interim period and just have
Yeah, and it
recommendations.
sounds like timeline might have been one of the things that got changed in the amendments.
well, to tag onto your question, I don't think anyone has done anything about planning for interim except us. Is that
That's-
fair or not fair?
I don't think that's fair, but I
Okay.
mean,
Well, not
You're
planning for,
thinking-
but exemption.
At creating exemptions
you
for,
added additional exemptions. The House Committee extended the exemptions that were added last year.
and then one of the amendments extended exemptions.
Okay. And that passed.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
But we just need to understand the
The timeline.
details of this.
yes,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And maybe have another graph.
Yeah.
I have a question. Was tier 1A something that could be appealed beyond the
Yes,
creation of the designation to the Supreme Court?
yes.
But no.
And do all of the appeals go to the board, the natural resources board now? Or do some still go to the court under their?
We're just,
The
Very high
appeal
level.
of Act 250 permits goes to the board.
Okay, and which used to go to the court. So the appeal of municipal permits would go to the court?
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
they conflated all the,
that's something we should definitely talk about.
absolutely.
So that language about moving appeals to a board has actually passed the House and the Senate twice and has been vetoed by the governor twice.
Right. Well, I think that's another reason to.
This is existing language
Yeah.
that has passed multiple times and is nearly identical to what has been previously passed.
When was the last time the Senate passed that?
Last year,
Which.
234. I think that was,
No, right?
unless that was 2022, but it was pretty recent. So it was like,
so
I feel like we would have wrapped on more if it was last year. Yeah,
I don't think we did it.
because a lot of times the market would kind of let housing ish stuff go, like.
I think it was SNRE.
Yeah,
but we passed it as a body. The governor has, vetoed that just in terms of expense. I mean, I can't remember what his, in his letter, anyway, you can find
The
it.
veto letter.
I mean,
mean,
so I will say, we looked at, what the NRB said their expenses would be to accommodate this work. And we found that money. I think it's gonna be a question for us and the money committees as to. Did they put an appropriation for this change, and is it the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
amount?
So obviously, the budget this year is tight.
Yeah,
So, there is an amendment, the appropriation amount of funding in this bill, however, it was due to the fact that, the rollout of the additional need will not be in future fiscal years.
okay,
So they reduced it so that the NRB can hire new staff this fiscal year, but the full board members won't take effect until next year anyways.
Got
Into FY 26.
okay. Senator Clarkson, did you have a question?
I did, but I am now, my head is now focused on, we're gonna have to weigh all these pieces because we, of course, added an additional judge, with our construct. So I think we're obviously have to discuss all of that. Many things will still go to the E-court. I mean, there's still a need for a very strong and robust E-court. But this will be,
Yeah.
we have to do all that.
Yeah, and so I'll just, we can talk about that. I think that, so first of all, the House budget has 3 new judges for the Superior Court.
I was gonna say access to justice, it's a big,
It's a huge issue,
it's an issue anyway, so they've said that they wanna increase Superior Court anyway for all.
And-
which is great. So that meshes
Yeah,
nicely.
Yeah, and so
That came out. of line.
moving the appeals to a board, came out of the Act 250 commission process from 5 years ago.
Right.
There's data that the prior board heard and decided appeals much more quickly than the courts do currently. So that is something
Yeah.
that they were considering.
Yeah.
so it sounds like,
And it's only about 15 appeals a year, so it will not, ruin the environmental court in any way. It will just, that will be, less. And the environmental court existed before Act 250 appeals were heard there. They were not originally heard there, so this will be
Right.
returning them to their prior workload.
so I think that's what we have time for on this today. A little bit of sort of business in between, because I do wanna make some announcements, but we are learning that unless something dramatic changes, warning committees will start to get less time the week of April 30th and will close at the end of that week.
We'll see.
Well, I need to operate as though that's happening, which means
Right.
this committee, we kind of have one more, this week is kind of faked, it's hearing about House bills, it's moving at a certain pace. If the committee fully wants to hear the stakeholders and how they feel about 687, some of these pieces, we're probably gonna have to start meeting a little bit earlier next week and looking ahead at future weeks, meeting earlier, because we have a lot of volume. So this is a time to sort of figure out what's really important to the committee. And if everybody wants to keep hearing about 687 and the path that it's taking in natural resources, that's a 2-week conversation. Randy, I was saying, and then it goes to finance and then appropriations, so. We will sort all that out, but I just want to put that on everybody's radar. We are operating with about 3 weeks left of time to do work. Thanks so much, Ellen, and thanks for everything you are about to do to help us better understand the amendments as well.
And thank you for all your work, which has gotten it this far.
Yeah. Tears, I have that in mind. Representative Lamont, why don't usually we would just hear from the a lead sponsor or reporter,
Yes.
so we had in the witness chair, and then we'll let you go back to committee if you prefer that. Oh,
They're in
No,
caucus.
we're in
Okay.
caucus right
They're in
now.
caucus,
Yeah,
right.
okay. So yeah, take the witness chair, please, Crown Act. Been hearing about this for a while, and I will say to folks, we have like other young people who want to testify and things, so we're trying to fit all that
Lovely, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you, Chair, for having me. So I'm gonna briefly give you the summary or recap because as we know, this was originally introduced back at the 2021-2022 session as S35 by Senator Hardy. And so we have revisited and it came through the General and Housing Committee of the House, where we heard testimony and we established this, why it's important. The Crown Act has been coming around for quite some time as a direct result in the state of Vermont. Why is it important here? I get that question a lot because nationwide there are many advocates who have been working towards establishing this. 23 states thus far have passed some version of a Crown Act.
And I'll pause just to say, when Magali printed a lot of our labor bills last week, I put them in a folder, it's in there.
Okay.
63, so we have the language.
Yes,
23 states, you said?
yes. So we would be the 24th.
Creeping towards that.
Right. And I also have this one pager for funsies.
We like color.
I can get more. I can bring more down.
You keep it. You keep it.
But
That's fine.
yeah, I can bring more down.
Did you
for
make
sure.
it? Or did like?
My intern did.
Okay.
I have to give credit where credit is due.
Right, well, I'm like, who made this? Because
Yeah.
I forget.
I think, it's so much information. Well, I could just tell you, like, this is all of my file on this and my floor speech alone with so many pages. And everyone's like, can I have that information? And I was like, I'll consolidate it.
Yay.
For you. Right? Let's give you the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, well, here in Vermont, we've had some instances of students in school experiencing harassment around having their hair being touched without their consent. I shared on the floor an experience of my own child who was told at her dance performance that she would have to take her braids out in order to be able to perform.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, when you pay for dance classes, you have to pay for your child to perform, you have to pay for the costume, and then you have to pay to watch the performance. And then to be told that your child would not be able to perform
Right.
because their hair had to be in a proper bun, of which braids can be worn in a proper bun.
Well, it's also expensive to undo somebody's hair to do it again.
Right,
That's another
right.
factor.
Which had just
Yeah.
It is. And so it was, it was a learning experience for the instructor and the owner of the dance institution.
What happened? You can't pay dance lessons unless you have long hair?
No, so in ballet, this institution is very strict.
Yeah, well, ballet is.
Ballet is very strict, yes. And she was not doing ballet. However, that organization is very strict on their appearance and their attendance and their behavior. And so appearance was one of the issues. And that's just one example
Yeah, no, that's.
of the things that happen. And I say that because I want to make it real. There have been other instances of students touching people's. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a very recent example. Last weekend, I went to, I won't say the name because I don't want to bash the establishment. I went to a local establishment here in Montpelier, very, a very common space. And the host, I was with my friend and her son, who is biracial and has beautiful head of hair. And we were seated at the table and the host comes over and says, and not even didn't say anything. She goes, "Oh my gosh, you have beautiful hair," and then proceeds to massage his hair and then states, "I know I'm not supposed to do this." And then does it again. And he says, "Yes, people do that to me in school all the time and I don't like it." These are the, yes. Well, I mean, and it was, so for me, we did have a conversation, a follow-up conversation with the owners of the establishment because it is a respected establishment.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to create problems. We're like, listen, we're not here to get anyone in trouble. This is just a simple learning experience because this individual was very cognizant of what they were doing and that it was wrong and continued to do it anyways. And not only that, when the wait staff came over, said, "Isn't his hair lovely? But you can't touch it because I've already done it twice."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That was last weekend. Okay. So I'm just saying, like, these are things that are really happening in real time. And in the moment, it seems like something so trivial. But imagine being a child and having your body consistently violated, or being an individual in general and having your body being touched without consent, not being able to get a job because you're considered dirty or unkept, because your hair is in braids or locks or its natural state. You know, people complain about the appearance and the aesthetic of natural hair texture. And the Crown Act, this is very important also that I want to name. I didn't give you my whole spiel. I can submit my floor, what I did on the floor so that y'all can have that. I'll spare you the lengthy report. But you know, the really importance here, I have to explain this to folks because people are like, well, you know, well, what if it's a white person that has an afro, or a white person that has braids, or anything like that? And I have to explain, in this particular bill, what we are addressing, it is associated and presumed to be associated with a specific race. And that is the issue here. Because regardless of who is wearing the style, protective or otherwise, it is frowned upon because of the race it is associated with. And so if the racism that was associated and attached with the assimilation that was required of people of color for several years to straighten their hair or not wear it in its natural state hadn't existed, we wouldn't look down upon those natural styles now, right? And so that's why this is important, because it robs people of the opportunities to show up as their whole authentic selves, to express their culture, their value, their norms. Hair is important for many cultures, many backgrounds, many demographics, not just people of color. It happens to be significant for Black people explicitly because of the historical attachments based on the meaning of braids and hairstyles and just the source of identity and the erasure that has occurred over centuries of identity because of social norms, right? Trying to get people to not only assimilate, but to, I don't want to say confine, but to conform, that's the word, to conform to this ideal that is aesthetically pleasing to social norms of most folks, right? But that robs people of their sense of identity, their sense of self. And it does something to you mentally, not to mention the legal ramifications for adults, for women who or not even women, men, people in general who are denied jobs for their parents, who are fired from jobs because they refuse to conform and assimilate, who are discriminated against in various ways for simply showing up and existing the way God created them.
Thank
It's a
you.
great
Well,
way to put it.
So I just wanna, if you're okay, I think we should go to just a couple questions
Yeah.
for you about intent and language, and then hear from Damien. So I wanted to first make sure we understand before we let you go, how you're defining protective hairstyle. Is it, you know, protective of the texture of someone's hair and the sort of ways that people want to make sure there's no breakage, or is it protective in terms of and like a more symbolic sense of that word?
So it's less of symbol, it's more of the literal sense.
Okay, yeah, like
The literal sense of actually physically
Mhm,
protecting your
yes,
hair.
yeah.
And also, and I also said in my presentation
Mhm.
as well, it's also of the the protection aspect of that, because, veiling is what it's called,
Yeah.
is a thing. And what that means is covering your head,
Mm-hmm.
the head covering,
Mm-hmm.
to protect your essence and your mind from it being exposed to other things.
Okay.
So that does exist, but that's not what's explicitly defined here. Here we are explicitly talking about protective styles that protect hair texture
Okay.
and things like that. And when we say protective styles, it is because our hair is different,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it needs to be embraced and celebrated, but it requires a different level of care
Yeah.
and maintenance,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
just a
that
different type altogether.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so that is
Yeah.
what we're referring to.
Okay. Senator Clarkson.
So hair and discrimination is not just a race-based issue.
Right.
So did you discuss in committee, people discriminate against women with white hair. I mean, I proudly have not done anything with my hair, but people are, there is active discrimination, ageism discrimination for people who choose to keep their own hair color. So did you discuss that as well? Discrimination based on slightly broader than race? I mean, I know this is race-based, but
Right.
discrimination with hair is broader.
Senator Cummings. Yeah.
I'm aging myself, but I remember way back in the 70s and 60s when men had their hair touch their ears or their collars, that there was great discrimination against hair length.
This might be when we have Damien in the witness chair in terms of that's, I mean, the white hair is still tied to discrimination against someone's age, so this is also saying this is particular hair discrimination that's tied generally to race, so,
I appreciate that, but I
Yes.
asked that.
or gender in the case.
Right, and
Yeah.
so I asked Sally if you had discussion of that in looking at this a little more, slightly more broadly against color and length, and I mean, there are other aspects of
Yes, so
discrimination.
So thank you for that question. And actually, we did not hear testimony explicitly on age and white hair. However, we did discuss gender. We did discuss religion. We did discuss other things. There was actually an amendment that was brought to our committee to expand the definition outside of just race-based and to include the broader sense of protected classes, which included marital status, gender identity, all of those other things that are included in our protected classes. And what the committee had come up with and we discussed, this is important because it is explicitly about the erasure and protection of a specific group. It is not that we do not want to incorporate and include those other categories. However, this is not that. This is saying, let me just, can I read the definition of the Crown Act really quickly? Of that might exist on the handout that I passed out. But, the Crown Act is, hold on.
So this is like a purpose?
Yeah, it's an acronym, actually.
Oh, right.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an
But
acronym.
that is not here, I don't see.
Okay,
the acronym.
so let me read for you. The Crown Act is an acronym. C is creating a respectful, is R, and open world for natural hair.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Can you just say that one more time?
yep, creating a respectful and open world for natural hair.
Cause I can ask Damien this, but I thought that when the bill passed, it was then officially named the Crown Act, and I just don't. Oh, this is as passed by the House. Did it not become the Crown Act?
No, we don't,
It's not an act yet anyway.
So-
It's a bill.
Right, sorry.
we don't name bills, we could say this bill shall be known as the Crown
That's what
Act.
I mean, because we
But
did
we
that for
didn't
the
do
whole
that.
act. Yeah,
Yeah, but
that didn't happen. I
that
thought
just
that was
wasn't
gonna happen.
a choice made in the House, it's what people have been referring to it as.
Do you want this bill, do you want us to amend it to name it the Crown Act when it passes?
I hate to, and we will discuss this
Yeah.
more fully, but if we do that, I hate to say this, but if natural hair is this too, natural hair is length.
Well, I think
And so
Damien's gonna talk about other forms
I
of
think we're gonna talk
discrimination.
discrimination
Yeah.
about hair. if we do call it the Crown Act, then I would have,
So you're saying
and that is
natural,
not just race-based, but,
you mean natural like white?
I mean, yeah, I mean, age discrimination.
Unnatural hair, like purple color.
Right, yeah.
What about no hair?
That's also true.
Right.
Anyway.
So why don't you finish the thought about why it was important to keep this
Yes.
focused on?
Yes, well, and so as I already stated, the reason why it was important to focus on this, and I'm gonna say what was said in committee, I won't, you said you can go back and watch testimony if you so choose. But as it came up in committee, is we don't want this to become an all lives matter bill.
Yeah,
This is explicitly
yeah, right.
to protect a certain demographic that has been historically mistreated, not in a minimal way, in a significant way. And let me just give you some stats really quickly. Hair discrimination, also known as texturism, is real. According to the 2023 Crown Workplace Research Study, 66% of Black girls in predominantly white schools and 47% of Black girls in all schools report experiencing hair discrimination. 100% of Black girls in predominantly white schools who report hair discrimination state that the experience occurred by the age of 10. 47% of Black mothers have reported experiencing hair discrimination. A research study that surveyed 2,990 female identifying participants in the US in December 2022 and January 2023. The findings were Black women's hair was 2.5 times more likely to be perceived as unprofessional. More than half of Black women surveyed felt like they had to wear their hair straight in a job interview to be successful. 2/3 reported that they had to change their hair for a job interview. 1 out of 5 of Black women surveyed between the ages of 25 and 34 have been sent home from work because of their hair. 1 out of 4 of the Black women surveyed believe that they were denied a job because of their hair. We have students in schools around the country who have been denied, not only my daughter's example with dance, students who have been denied access to play sports. And in Texas, we just had a student that hadn't attended school for over a year because he refused to cut his locks and he was denied access to his education. So when we talk about these things, no offense to aging, folks with white hair, my mom, right? Or blonde, she does go blonde. And so, it's not about that. This is about the livelihood, the self-esteem, the mental health, the well-being, the access to opportunities, and the lack thereof that significantly impacts a certain demographic of people in major ways that not only impacts them in that moment, but throughout the trajectory of their entire lives. And as a result, it's not just about a job. It's not just about being able to play that sport. This is someone's entire sense of self, sense of well-being, mental health, physical health, and ability to thrive and be a successful human in our community. And when we deny people that, what are we doing? Right? So it's so much more, right? It's so much more than gray hair, straight hair, men's hair, facial hair. This is about people having the right to say, we see you, we hear you, we honor you as you were born to exist in this world, because we believe that you should have the same access to opportunities, activities, and employment as everyone else, regardless how your physical appearance is, if you choose to show up in your natural and or protective state.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, discrimination, yes, I absolutely hear where your committee landed on that.
This is a very specific bill. Very thing. If people come to us and they have other forms of discrimination around appearance that they want to have dealt with, that's one thing. But this is a very specific movement and this is the only group asking us, you know, to look at the racial experience of hair. There's no one coming and saying, like, we're carte blanche being discriminated against throughout society for.
Well, and I think age, I think there are other protections.
Exactly.
I can discuss that.
And religion, like Sikhs, you know, wear
Yes.
their hair, and
And most of those are covered, and so
Exactly,
Damien will
that's
get into the things that are already covered.
yeah.
And.
No, but
and-
this was really perfect. I appreciate you
Okay.
saying like, this is why we kept this the way.
Well, that's why I asked the question.
Have you heard
why
any
don't they discuss it?
opposition?
No, not really. I think I'm trying to think, did we hear any opposition? I think there were many questions.
Mhm.
I do, and I may be mistaken, but I don't recall, and that could be because I'm over involved and invested.
Well, interested, the number of states have adopted this.
Yeah.
Has anybody
23.
opposed it?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and in Texas, like I said, it passed in Texas.
Yeah.
And yet there are still institutions that are saying, no, we
Right,
don't, we don't support that. So, there's that divide that does happen. In Vermont, I don't know, but I do know that we have heard from a number of people of color in the state of Vermont who would desperately want to see something like
Right.
this, who've had these experiences, and not only people of color, but employers,
Yeah.
community members, partners, spouses,
Absolutely.
who have witnessed these things happen to their loved ones and want to see this be addressed.
Yes, I think to your point about the stories that you told and the awareness that this raised, asking questions hopefully wasn't too painful or traumatic. Hopefully it was a good thing so that we're educating Vermonters, how important it is that this be considered uniquely and specially, that during the pandemic, a lot of Black women could not find anywhere to get their hair done, and sort of other communities experience that for the first time. And when you go into a job interview and your future employer can tell you, I know where you can get your hair done, I know a person you can call, they are not just saying like, I'm trying to help you fit in. They're saying, I see you and that this is a unique experience that you need to feel supported in. So this is a workforce bill as well, because I don't think employers will oppose it once they understand it. It's a way for them to know how important this is to a whole community that we want to make feel more welcome in our workplaces.
Did anyone ever raise questions about military haircuts and military hair requirements in connection with this?
It did come up, as well as uniforms and other things, and this does not supersede any safety or any uniform requirements. So that did come up, and I think Damien can speak to that, so he gave me some language, so I'll let him stick to that, 'cause that's the legalese.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
One more, okay, are we good?
yeah,
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you very much, that was really helpful.
Thank you.
That was terrific.
thank you.
Super
Thank
helpful.
you, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions, and I can see if I can figure out how to submit that electronically.
Yeah,
So
and maybe just send us your witness list so that we can make sure we talk,
Talk to the same folks.
well, or just if there was any if you just look through the witness list and say, oh yeah, they had questions that weren't resolved or something. I don't think we're gonna hear much. It's been on our agenda for a while.
What was your floor vote? Didn't you have a roll call on the meeting?
132.5.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It was
Yeah.
incredibly strong.
132 to 5.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I will say
It's the
that
strongest vote this year.
the conversations that subsued as a result were the best part. Because so many people came up to me after to engage in conversation and ask really thoughtful questions.
That's
And
great.
That's actually where the one pager came from, because some colleagues are like, I had no idea this was an issue, and I would like to talk about this in my rural Vermont community.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
So can I please have a one pager? And that's
Right.
how.
That's great.
Thank you
You're
so much.
accomplishing
Thank you,
the goal.
Damien. I think
Thank
that's helpful
you.
to have you here.
Thank
you
So
so
any other
much.
questions on the side?
I can come back.
Yes, we'll have you back. Well, we have you back tomorrow anyway. So we're done, committee. I want to thank the committee again for a very strong floor vote today on a constitutional amendment. I think that took all of us, but Senator Harrison did a great job. reporting. So thank you and
With a piece in about legislators being allowed to unionize.
yes, like you could have, you know.
I had to cut a
I wanted that in.
Yeah.
Um,
Fine print at the bottom.